We found a hollow tree that echoed like a cathedral. At first it was just a curiosity. One of those old giants split and emptied by time, its interior worn smooth and dark as if something had been polishing it from within. The trunk rose wider than either of us could circle, bark ribbed and cold with moss. When I stepped close, the air around it felt different, cooler, as if the tree exhaled from a place that never saw daylight. "Say something," Mark said. I laughed, a short breath of sound, and leaned toward the opening. "Hello." The word went in soft. What came back did not feel like an echo. It returned fuller, rounded, as if the tree had taken my voice and deepened it, stretching it into something solemn and deliberate. It didn't just repeat. It answered, carrying a resonance that hung in the clearing long after the original sound should have died. "Hello." It seemed to bloom outward, touching the surrounding trunks, the low branches, the ground. The forest went quiet in response. Not the normal hush of distant birds and wind, but a held breath. Mark grinned. "That's insane. Do it again." I did, louder this time. "Hello." The echo came slower. Not wrong enough to notice at first, just delayed, as if it had farther to travel than it should. But when it emerged, it didn't match me exactly. Hello. The hitch in it made my skin tighten. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "Hear what?" Mark stepped closer, peering into the hollow. "It's just the acoustics." He clapped his hands once, sharply. The sound went in and fractured. We both heard it, how it didn't return as a single clap but as a layered ripple, like multiple hands striking at slightly different times. The last of them came too late, a trailing impact that landed after everything else had settled. Clap, 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 clap. The final one felt misplaced, like a footstep from behind us. We turned instinctively, scanning the trees. Nothing moved. No wind. No birds shifting on branches. The forest held stillness like a secret. Mark laughed again, but softer. "Okay, that's weird." I didn't answer. I was listening. There was a faint sound inside the trunk, so low it barely registered. A kind of internal murmur, like breath drawn through a narrow space. "Did you hear?" "I didn't say anything," Mark cut in. "I know. I didn't." The murmur came again, clearer this time. Not a word. Not quite. Just the shape of one forming. We stood there, neither of us speaking, waiting for it to resolve into something understandable. Didn't. It faded instead, retreating deeper into the hollow. Mark took a step back. "Let's go." We left it behind, but the silence followed. The trail out should have been simple. We'd only gone in for an hour, cutting off the main path to explore a denser stretch of woods that locals didn't bother with. But as we walked, the forest felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. The ground was softer than before, the moss damp against my boots. Branches leaned inward slightly, narrowing the space ahead. "You remember which way?" Mark asked. "Yeah, this way." But I wasn't as certain as I sounded. We walked faster. The light had shifted without us noticing, dimming as the canopy thickened. Shadows stretched in long, thin lines that didn't quite align with the angle of the sun. Behind us, something cracked. A branch. Close. We both stopped. "Probably a deer," Mark said. But he didn't turn around. I did. Nothing. Just the same trees, spaced unevenly, their trunks pale in the fading light. Then, faintly, from somewhere deeper in the woods, "Hello." My voice. Not the echo from before. Not distant enough. It sounded like it had been spoken a few seconds ago, by someone standing where we'd just been. Mark's face went tight. "You heard that, right?" "Yeah." We didn't speak again for a while. The forest seemed to listen in the absence of our voices. Every step felt louder than it should have been, boots pressing into damp earth with a muted, sucking sound. Even our breathing carried farther, brushing against the trunks and returning in faint, distorted fragments. At some point, I realized the echoes were coming back wrong. Not just delayed. Changed. Mark coughed once, a dry sound. A few seconds later, it came back softer, longer, like someone trying to imitate the act without understanding it. Cough. We stopped walking. Don't make any noise, I said. He nodded. We stood there in complete silence. Took longer this time, but eventually something answered. Not immediately. Not as a reflection. A response. Don't make any noise. The words were almost mine. Almost. The pitch was off, the cadence stretched, as if each syllable had been learned separately and stitched together without rhythm. Mark grabbed my arm. It's copying us. Yeah. From the tree. I didn't want to say it out loud, but the thought had already settled in my chest. We started moving again, faster now, less careful. Branches brushed against our shoulders. Twigs snapped underfoot despite our attempts to step lightly. Every sound we made felt like a signal, and every signal came back. Not always immediately, sometimes delayed, sometimes overlapping, sometimes emerging from the wrong direction. At one point, I heard footsteps behind us, perfectly matching our pace, our rhythm. When we stopped, they stopped too. When we moved, they followed. Mark turned suddenly, shouting, "Stop it!" The word slammed into the trees. "Stop it!" Came back layered, multiplied. Then again softer. "Stop it!" And then, from somewhere closer than it should have been. "Stop!" Singular. Clear. We ran. The forest resisted in subtle ways. Low branches dipped into our path. The ground sloped unevenly, forcing us off course. The light dimmed further, shadows thickening into something almost tangible. I could hear it now more clearly, not just mimicking, experimenting. Fragments of our voices, rearranged. Words we hadn't said formed from pieces we had. "This way. Don't. Stop." They came from different directions, overlapping, creating false paths. Each one sounded plausible enough to follow. "Don't listen to it," I shouted. "Don't listen." It repeated, closer this time. Mark stumbled beside me, catching himself on a low branch. "It's hurting us," he said. I realized he was right. Every time we veered, a sound would draw us back. Subtle at first, then more insistent. The forest wasn't just reacting. It was guiding, leading us back. The hollow tree appeared ahead without warning, its dark opening wider than I remembered, its interior swallowing what little light remained. We skidded to a stop. "That's not possible," Mark said, breathless. We were going the other way. The air around the tree felt colder now, dense, like the inside of a cave. From within, something shifted. A sound, not quite movement, not quite breath. The same low murmur, but layered, complex, as if multiple voices were trying to align into one. I stepped back. "Let's go around it," I said. But the forest had closed in. The space behind us felt narrower, darker. The path forward, through the clearing, past the hollow, was the only one that didn't feel obstructed. "Just keep moving," Mark said. "Don't look inside." We walked. As we passed the opening, I couldn't help it. I glanced. There was no interior. Not in the way there should have been. The hollow didn't end. It receded, deeper than the thickness of the trunk allowed, its walls fading into a kind of soundless dark that seemed to absorb not just light, but presence. And within that depth, something listened. I felt it, a pressure in my ears, like the moment before a loud noise, but inverted, anticipating silence instead of sound. Then it spoke, not from behind, not from ahead, from everywhere at once. "Hello." Perfect this time. My voice, my tone, no distortion. Mark froze. "It got it right." "Don't respond," I whispered, but the word had already left my mouth. "Respond." It repeated instantly, without delay. Then again, slightly different. "Respond." Command now, not imitation. The forest shifted. Branches creaked, angling inward. The light dimmed further, narrowing the space around us. "Go," I said. We ran past the tree, not stopping, not looking back. This time, the path held. The forest didn't twist us around. The sounds followed, but they grew fainter, more distant, as if whatever lived in the hollow was tethered to it. By the time we reached the main trail, the echoes had stopped entirely. We didn't speak until we were back at the car. Even then, our voices felt fragile, like something that could be taken if we used it too freely. We drove home in silence. That night, I lay in bed listening to the quiet of my apartment. The city outside hummed faintly, distant traffic, a siren far off, the usual noise that fills the spaces between thoughts. Felt normal, safe. I closed my eyes. Somewhere in the apartment, something creaked, a settling sound, wood adjusting to the night air. I told myself it was nothing. Then, from the hallway, softly, "Hello." My eyes snapped open. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The silence stretched. And then, very gently, as if right outside my door, something tried again. Hello? The forest lights dimmed as if someone lowered an invisible switch. It wasn't gradual. One moment the late afternoon sun filtered cleanly through the canopy, turning the moss bright and damp underfoot, catching on the edges of leaves like scattered glass. The next, it dropped noticeably, decisively, like a hand had reached up and dragged the brightness down a notch. I stopped walking. "Did you see that?" I asked. Eli kept moving a few steps before turning back. "See what?" "The light. I gestured upward. Changed." He squinted through the trees. The sun was still there, pale and low, but it felt farther away than it should have been. The shadows beneath the branches had thickened, pooling in uneven patches. "Clouds," he said. "There aren't any." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Probably just the angle." It wasn't. I could feel it. The air had cooled slightly, carrying that damp, mineral scent of soil and bark, the kind of smell you only notice when something else has gone quiet. I realized then that the forest had stilled. Not completely, but enough that the usual background noise had thinned. No birds calling overhead. No insects buzzing at the edges of hearing. Just the faint sound of our breathing. "Let's keep going," Eli said, though his voice had dropped. We moved deeper along the trail, boots pressing into soft earth. The path narrowed, overgrown in places where low branches leaned inward. I kept glancing up, watching the way the light filtered through the canopy. It wasn't stable. Every few seconds, it seemed to dip again, subtle but distinct. Not flickering, not like clouds passing overhead. More like a controlled dimming, step by step, as if something were adjusting it with intent. "Okay," Eli said after a while. "Now I see it." The words had barely left his mouth when the light dropped again. This time, the effect was stronger. The spaces between the trees darkened first, shadows thickening into something almost tangible. The brighter patches followed a second later, losing their edge, their definition. The forest flattened. Depth felt unreliable. Distance compressed, then stretched again. "Let's head back," I said. Eli nodded immediately. We turned around. Or at least we thought we did. The path behind us looked right. Same uneven line of packed dirt, same leaning trunks marking the edges. But something about it felt off. The light along it was dimmer than it should have been, as if we were already further into evening than a moment ago. We started walking. The ground felt softer now, the moss thicker, absorbing the sound of our steps. Even the snap of twigs underfoot came out muted, as if the air itself were dampening it. Then the light dipped again. This time it didn't stop where it should have. It kept going, draining from the space in front of us until the path dissolved into a shallow gray haze. Not darkness exactly, just a reduction, like the world had been lowered to half visibility. "Stop," Eli said. We did. The dimness held for a few seconds, then eased back up, returning the forest to something close to normal. Neither of us spoke. "What if it's just our eyes?" he said finally. "Like adjusting or something." "To what?" He didn't answer. We kept moving slower now. I started noticing the shadows. Not the way they fell, those were wrong too, stretching at odd angles, but the way they shifted. Subtle movements, independent of the branches casting them. A shadow sliding across the ground without anything above it changing. A darker patch pulling slightly inward, like a breath being drawn. "Eli," I said quietly, I see it. A long shadow stretched across the path ahead of us, cast by a narrow trunk to the left. As we watched, it bent, not with the movement of the tree, but on its own, curving toward us like a reaching arm. The light dipped again, harder this time. The forest dropped into near darkness. Shapes flattened into silhouettes. The path disappeared entirely. I felt my chest tighten. We need to move. Where? Forward. Just straight. We stepped into the dim. The air felt thicker, colder. Every movement seemed slower, as if the space itself resisted us. I held my hands slightly out, feeling for branches, for anything. Then the light rose again. Not fully, just enough to see. We weren't on the path anymore. The ground beneath us was uneven, broken by roots and low stones. The trees stood closer together, their trunks angled in ways that blocked any clear direction. "That's not right," Eli said. "We didn't leave it." "I know." Behind us, something shifted. We turned. The path was there again. Clear. Defined. Exactly where we'd left it. But the light along it was brighter than anywhere else in the forest, like a corridor illuminated from above. "Okay," Eli said too quickly. "We just go back." We moved toward it. As soon as we stepped onto the path, the light dimmed. Not everywhere, just ahead of us. The section we were moving into darkened, while the ground behind us brightened slightly, as if the forest were adjusting in response to our position. "It's following us," I said. "No," Eli said. "It's reacting." "To what?" He didn't answer. The dimming came again, faster now, in pulses. Each time, the visible space shrank. The edges of our vision blurred into gray, then into something thicker, like a fog made of shadow. The brighter areas narrowed, concentrating around us, then shifting away as we moved. It felt deliberate, like something was testing the limits. A branch snapped somewhere to our right. We both turned toward the sound. The light followed our gaze, brightening slightly in that direction. Then it shifted, pulling away, dragging the illumination elsewhere, leaving that side darker than before. "It's moving the light," Eli said. "Or us." "I don't. Don't look where it wants," I said. "Just keep going." We faced forward again. The path stretched ahead, but it didn't feel stable. The edges wavered, narrowing, widening, as if the forest were breathing around it. Then Eli stopped. "What?" I asked. He didn't answer. I followed his gaze. Ahead of us, in a patch of dim light, something moved. Not a shape, not a figure, an absence. A section of space where the light seemed thinner, weaker, as if something stood there absorbing it. The edges of it shimmered faintly, like heat distortion, but colder. As we watched, it shifted. Not forward, not back, closer, without crossing the distance between us. The light dipped again. When it rose, the absence was nearer. Eli stepped back. It didn't move, but the light around it dimmed further, isolating it, defining it. "It's choosing," I said. "Choosing what?" I didn't know, but the way the light behaved, how it lingered on us, then withdrew, then returned, felt like attention, like focus. We started moving again, slower, careful not to look directly at it. The light followed, not evenly, not predictably. It brightened at our feet, then faded ahead, then shifted behind us, creating the sensation that something was always just outside what we could see. At one point, I caught a glimpse of my shadow on the ground. It didn't match me. It stood a fraction of a second out of sync, its movements lagging behind mine. When I stopped, it took one extra step before settling. I looked at Eli. His shadow was doing the same. "It's learning us," he said. The words felt too close to the truth. We broke into a run. The forest resisted. Branches angled into our path, low and sudden. The ground dipped unexpectedly, forcing us to stumble. The light pulsed faster, disorienting, turning the world into a sequence of half-seen frames. In one of those pulses, I lost Eli. He was beside me 1 second, gone the next. "Eli!" I shouted. The name echoed, but not outward, came back from ahead of me, from the path I was about to take. Eli, closer this time, then faintly from somewhere to my left. Here, his voice, but the light didn't move toward it, stayed fixed ahead, as if urging me forward. I stood there, heart hammering, trying to decide which direction was real. The light dimmed, everything flattened, and in that near darkness, the absence moved again, sliding through the space between trees without disturbing anything, only changing how visible it was. I ran forward. I don't know how long. The path reappeared beneath my feet in fragments, lit in brief, shifting intervals. The forest thinned slightly, the trees spacing out just enough to suggest an edge. Then suddenly the light returned. Fully, the forest snapped back into normalcy. Colors, depth, distance all restored in an instant. I stumbled onto the main trail. Empty. Eli wasn't there. I waited, called his name, listened. Nothing answered. Eventually, I left. I told myself he'd find his way out, that he'd taken a different direction, reached another exit. But even as I drove home, I kept watching the light, stayed steady, until I reached my apartment. I stepped inside, closed the door, and leaned against it, letting the normal brightness settle around me. Artificial light, fixed, reliable. For a while, it felt enough. Then, in the corner of the room, the light dimmed, just slightly, as if someone had touched a switch I couldn't see. I turned slowly. The shadow there didn't match anything in the room. And when I moved, it didn't follow.